What is up, my friends? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analyst is work you can find over at MMA Junkie as well as linemovement.com. But on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do here tonight, whenever you're listening to this. Hopefully it's before the fight. So I'm recording this Thursday in the afternoon time. The sun's still out. Early, Dan. What's going on? I don't know. Despite my usual busy weeks, which I won't get into, although I do tend to tweet some personals, things kind of went by at a weird flow this week. So here we are. I'm not going to complain. Hopefully you aren't either. Although I will say the Friday episode is no longer my late episode in this pandemic era, as hopefully, knock on wood, nothing will change from here to the recording, although that's probably not true. You know, there's still 48 hours or over so for things to happen. So let's hope for the best. But as per usual, I will be breaking down this card like I do all of them from top to bottom. And like I do for all of them, I will give you a timestamp in case you want to listen to a bit less of me, although the intro shouldn't be too long of this portion. Where are the breakdown stats? Check the show notes on whether you're on YouTube, if you're listening to the audio version there, like and subscribe, or on Apple Podcasts. Give us a subscribe and positive rating and review. I saw another 5-star rating come in. Thank you very much for that. If you guys leave reviews, I will read them. I didn't check that part, so maybe you won't get that read today. We shall see. Speaking of reads, I got to do an Amazon list, and I didn't pull it up because I'm a bad podcaster. We'll get to that in a second. But if you want to waste even less time, of course, I always recap picks and plays at the end. Not throwing shade at other podcasts, as, dude, if anybody gives love to podcasts more than, shouts to Sound of Violence, I'll give you guys a shout here in a second. This podcast gives a lot of shouts to other podcasts, more than I probably should. But hey, what can I do? I can't help it. It's in my nature. I don't know where the fuck I was going with that because I've been hitting the head too much. But yeah, I do appreciate the bad podcasting Amazon lists. I'll pull something up there. I appreciate you guys too. Yeah, check the timestamps, all that good stuff. Shoutouts. Speaking of shoutouts, there's not going to be much of a card to recap because Spencer Kite helped me recap that bonus episode there. At Spencer Kite did a fantastic job from Canada over there, my neighbor to the north, UFC.com writer, and just all-around good guy who has been on this beat much longer than I. Give him a follow and check out that episode if you haven't. Only note I really have for UFC 257 Fallout is just all the fucking excuses and explanations that aren't a check right hook that I keep seeing float around. And because it's my nature, you guys know me, I'm not a victory lap guy, much less a revisionist history guy. I didn't pick Dustin. However, I did stress, because I stressed it in all southpaw matchups going back at least half a decade now, to Shevchenko home. These seem to be the most accurate matchups. You know, I don't know if that has anything to do with because your boy has had punches and kicks thrown at him from the southpaw stance and have done so from the southpaw stance for, since 1992. I don't know, but I tend to get those matchups the most right. Hence my frustrating Goodwill Hunting gif. You know, that's what I feel like. I feel like, that's one of the few times I feel smart. My self-deprecating ass gets a little frustrated, especially after, again, I don't care about. I already get that. Like, I'm not going to get follows or things, and I'll never probably get to call a UFC match or anything like that. Like, I'm coming to acceptance with these things. But for me, I'm more of like a respect for my peers guy, and I just keep seeing from colleagues to the fighters themselves, like Connor, just tweeting everything: calf kicks, lack of stance. Pacquiao prep, and I want to quote tweet everything and just go check right hook in all caps, but I'm not that guy, and I don't want to ear beat you because, especially with contradictory stuff like this, because I say I care, but really when people do compliment me, I will shut it the fuck down and run to the other way because I don't like compliments either. So I don't know, I don't think it's an ego thing, but it definitely is in that department. I won't deny it. And McGregor fight weeks are definitely the hardest for me. I get the most depressed and the most stress, as I'm sure many of my colleagues do. For me, it's because of my over-awareness, which definitely for the worse on a McGregor fight week, because you just see all the the social climbers and the clout chasing and all that stuff that I'm not a fan of, and I can see right through for the most part. You can tell a lot by the timelines. I tell you what people share and don't share. But you know what? Before I get bogged down with the negative, let's come back with the positive here, because when I think about those things, like, there are so many people of my colleagues that I do respect who, whether they do it publicly or in my DMs, have shown me love and recognition or certain things, and even people from other podcasts, like shouts to Brad from the MMA Analysis, or of course Ed Gallo. I love the Fight Site boys. Shouts to Ed Gallo. He gave me a shout for the check right hook as well. So it's not like I'm not getting credit or anything. It's not from an ego place. I don't want to sound like I'm crying about everything. It's more just people getting it wrong, annoying me, and just something that one of the few things my dumb ass actually does get right. It's more frustrating from that angle, So don't take it the wrong way. By the way, speaking of the Fight Site guys, I don't know why they keep having me back, but I'll definitely. It's been some of the more, especially as we get deeper into this pandemic, like the people you podcast with or whatever, like, become your only social interaction. So I tend to appreciate these people much more, and they keep having me back, so I'll keep going on. But make sure you check out the panel. Real fun panel we did over there. Shout outs to Dan Albert. Follow him at Typewriting DNA, sorry, and of course, at Shuram Says, Shuram and Ed Gallo, Edward Gallo or at Edward Gallo MMA on Twitter. Either way, I'll give him a share. But there was a great panel where we discussed, like, speaking of Poirier, the southpaw. He was the lone southpaw, but how he would do against Gaethje, Chandler, and Oliveira, and how those kind of mix and match, right? Really fun. Go check that out. That's over on the Fight Site YouTube. So if you're over there, give them a like and subscribe while you're giving this video a like and subscribe. And then speaking of shouts and analysts that I respect, Connor Rebush came back on the program. I know I kind of teased it for a minute. Man, it was fun. We got to do a classic of his, if you're a Heavy Hands fan, which you should be if you're not. That was really fun doing our top 5 athletic cheaters. I know there's a lot of inside jokes, especially for podcast listeners of that show, but just the way the editing worked out, I did a little... Connor left me an Easter egg, if you will, on our breaks, so I kind of parlayed that to combine the intro stylings there, so to pay homage to the HH, the Heavy Hands intro. So big shouts to Connor and his podcast over there with Phil. Great dudes, of course. Go check that out. And lastly but not leastly, again, kind of to speak of Don't Take Me Seriously and why I'm contradictory, Sound of Violence Pod, I got to give them a shout. Because when people do give me shouts, I'm like, shut up, I hate it. And especially because, like, I genuinely enjoy this podcast, just because they just seem like dudes. Pulver and Chris Medaffer seem like dudes I would hang with and partake with. But we'll just say that. Shouts to those dudes. And it's a good service, I know they talk about a lot of podcasts like mine too much. But, like, no, all joking aside, when I'm not getting uncomfortable with the mention of my name, it's great because they mention podcasts like I'm not aware of, and, like, their award show particularly, like, I was, I gotta go check that out. So that was cool. I don't know, I think I made the top 10. Either way, it doesn't matter where I'm ranked because it was too high to even be in that. So, yeah, they're way too nice, but I will say they gave me some kind of, like, guest award or whatever for being a guest on podcasts, and I didn't realize it. And again, kind of rounding it out to, like, recognition and being grateful, and in turn paying it forward. You want to put the positive spin on it, but no, really, because I didn't realize this. So I was like, wow, I was not even expecting to be mentioned for this, but, like, I was on a lot of podcasts this last year, and that's not a credit to me, by the way. That is a credit to the people willing to sully their brand by having me on their show. So I know they're giving me a shout, but really that's more of a pay it forward shout to just people who had me, man. Fernanda, Best Kept in My Life, Bill Welker, MMA on the Rocks, right? Follow him. Shaq having me on his show, that was great. Kyler always having me on his sports shows, all the radio spots, Fight Site guys, obviously, right? Plenty. I can't mention off the top of my head, but I was just thinking about that, and I got to put a tweet together because there was a lot, and I was like, wow. Man, Nicole Bosco, again, we need more female voices in the media space, to have me as their first guest, which, I'm nobody special, but like that was really cool. Granted, a former colleague, but like love seeing more females in the space, and to take part in any of these in any way has just been awesome. Even doing the Tourette's podcast, not that counts for the MMA space, but that was big for me. And I know most of you guys don't know, like, I have Tourette's, like, especially how the media portrays it. Like, I guess I don't check those boxes, but newsflash, whether you like the guy or not, I think it's Adam Curry, who is the podfather, who's officially credited as starting podcast. That dude has Tourette's too, so you can make fun of Tourette's all you want, or the fact that my lone last aspiration in this space is to call an MMA fight at any level, by the way. But the fact is, a dude with Tourette's started podcasting, so that's a fact. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, just seeing that support and stuff, like, man, as much as I complain about little stupid shit like the check right hook rant or whatever, like, don't take me too seriously. Like, I get, and even with, like, when I get bummed out at, like, now that I have to pay attention to analytics, shares, and all that stuff, and it's really bummed me out, to be honest, this past couple months. I'd be lying if it hasn't. Part of me is just like, dude, when I look at, like, all the people that, like, do support and for some reason want me on their show, like, I'm like, I don't deserve that. I've never been ingratiated as much as I am right now in my life. So, like, even on the podcast episodes that barely crack 150 or 200 listeners or whatever, like, that's more people that pay attention to me in my life. So, man, I'm super freaking grateful, and shouts to @TSOVPod for helping me further come to that conclusion. Not that I need these lessons, but you know what I'm saying. It's awesome. It was really cool. So thank you. All right, I know I talked way too much. I tried to do this shorter, but hey, whatever. It's cool. Let's go to UFC Vegas 18. We're going to break it down from top to bottom, of course. Headlined by Alistair Overeem versus Alexander Volkov. Overeem actually opened as your favorite, minus 125 with the public. It's pushed Volkov to your favorite, now 2-1. Minus 200, Overeem plus 170. I get the movement. I wouldn't even have hated Volkov being opened as a favorite. He is legit. I've followed him for a while. I've scouted him for fighters before, for Roy Nelson, I believe, back in the day. And I don't bring that up. There's plenty of people that do scouting way better than me. So I'm not. It's never been a specialty. But when that work has come across, I've taken it, and when it has, the good byproduct about it is whatever the fighter I was looking at. Like, you guys hear how deep I go. Like, in general, like, I go even deeper if you imagine that. And Volkov was one of those dudes, so I don't in no way underestimate him. And again, I get the line movement, but I'm going to go against it. And it shouldn't surprise anybody who are upset that Overeem's the dog, or how could you? And, like, don't be upset. Just place your money if you feel that passionate about it. I'm going to be placing a little bit here. Spoiler alert, and don't follow me off that cliff. It's heavyweight MMA, but I'll explain why, and not just out of principle, which it's not a bad principle over him at Dog Money. I think someone tweeted the account when I just tweeted that I was going to record. But let's be honest, and this isn't a shot. I know MMA gambling bunch can be a sensitive bunch as well. So, and hey, I'm not beyond it, so I get it. But I'm not coming at you guys. But just like I admit my bias on the show, and if you guys want to be, good MMA gamblers or whatever you want to call it, or whatever your goals are with that, you got to be able to call your own biases. And let's be honest, the typical MMA gambler bias, like, I joke about jerking off Figueiredo, but like, when it comes to A, fading older veterans with a suspect chin, and B, supporting a sexier striker, or as I put in my main event breakdown, which you can go check out every week at MMAJunkie.com. Not only do I not miss the cards here, I don't miss the cards there. And this one I actually, like, I wrote way more than I thought, I'm going to be honest. because let's be honest, when you see this line, it's like it totally makes sense, because at the MMA betting point that I was just on, like, MMA gamblers, you gotta admit it, guys. You guys get so hard. You guys get rock hard when you see matchups like this. You're like, what? Sexy striker dude? Long striker dude against aging vet? Like, I can just hear you all unzipping and just, jostling your belt buckles like Rogan calling leg kicks on the broadcast. You know what I'm saying? Again, love y'all. I'm not hating anybody I just mentioned there. I'm just, hey, man, yeah, that's the truth. Them be the facts. And so that's what I see on this. It has its fingerprints written all over it, because there's a lot of logic going against it when you look at, I know, styles matchups, but I know I live and die by that sword, and it's an admitted bias, and I never tell people to follow me off the cliff. I'm not telling you where to put your money, nor am I charging you. Again, I do all this content for free. But for what it's worth, folks, I'm always in the top picks for staff picks. I won last year, but like, really, I mean, for what it's worth, that doesn't matter to me as much as being consistent. And consistently, I'm not in that game or boast or whatever, but I'm able to withdraw from my accounts at the end of the year betting wise, and my pick percentages are always in the winning as well. So, I'll continue going style matchups for A, results, and B, it's just what I'm passionate about. It's what I felt the media space was lacking, especially, not that you need to come from a martial arts base, but spending over 20 years competing in multiple different combat sports around the world didn't hurt. Like, it's something I'm sorry, I'm not trying to sound cocky here. I just don't, again, something these McGregor fight weeks, when I see everybody like fucking, dick riding every inkling of close to a right call, I go, I don't toot my own horn enough as I get upset about little stupid things. So, but yeah, man, like, I'm gonna keep with that winning formula of style matchups, and style matchups, especially when we're looking at the cage sizes. The small cage is back in play in this pandemic era. We're either at Fight Island in a big cage or at the Apex in a small cage, and stylistically speaking, that shit is kryptonite to a guy like Volkov, a tall, long striker. And against a guy like Overeem, who, it's not underrated anymore for people who've been paying attention, but he's been re-emphasizing his wrestling. Granted, it's not fundamental or textbook the way he's been securing singles. However, if you look at what he's been doing, it's been in a smaller cage against the cage, and he's really good at using momentum and barriers. I mean, that comes from the ring a lot. A lot of guys get that habit off of ropes, and although obviously there's not as much give in a cage or a fence as ropes, a lot of those principles apply, and you'll see guys take that over, and that's what Overeem was kind of mixing in with his wrestling there. It gets the job done, and then we've seen awkward takedowns do get the job done against Volkov, although the efficacy of Verdum's single leg snatches I would favor over Overeem's. However, as good of a grappler Verdum is not as a positionally aware guy. He's an aggressive grappler, whereas Overeem, very positionally aware, and he kind of is like a wrestler. I know he got ground and pounded by Curtis Blades, but styles make fights, folks, and there's a lot of things that happened before that third round stoppage against Blades. So don't look at me like crazy when I say that Overeem, I actually rate his ground and pound higher than Blades, despite him getting split open like a freaking fire hydrant. And we saw that in the Volkov fight, is because if Blades can't, and I expect him to improve, I'll probably be changing my pick and supporting him against Lewis, like last time, even though the fight never happened. But like, you got to expect him to improve. But like, his wrestling rides, he doesn't emphasize as much on wrist controls as Overeem, and even Overeem was doing quote unquote wrestly stuff that I would like to see you would expect a wrestler like Blades to do more of, like collapsing posts. You'll see Overeem do that when a guy goes to turtle. He kind of like a collapsing post, so a guy goes to post on his arm. He's kind of hitting like that crux of the arm and collapsing and making the elbow break, right? Making them heavy on their hands, fall toward their face. That gives you the beat, positioning to strike, get in better position to possibly submit. Volkov's going to be hard to deal with, though. We saw that, because even when Verdum got him down or other guys got him down, he's very long, right? He's difficult to deal with. Blades complained about that, too, as well, right? So I don't know if Overeem's going to get the job inside or not. I picked him to get it done inside the distance. I placed a small wager on him. But he also has the gas to go the distance. So if his chin holds up, which is, Overeem's chin, like, I know, I get it. I tweeted he's been dropped or stopped in 10 of his last 18 fights. Again, if I may pat myself on the back, that's stats that you don't see other people do, and I consistently give you these kind of stats, like one I'll get to in the co-main event as well, because the stats you have to really fucking dig and watch tape for, or just at least really dig for. Not throwing shade, just give him, God forbid, give myself a little bit of a pat on the back. I'm not ignoring those stats that I throw out there, folks. The point is, and it's just like, Overeem's always kind of had a suspect chin, though. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like after you got knocked out by Chuck, we're like, oh crap, wait, and then he took some bad. He's always kind of taking bad knockouts. When he loses bad, right? However, he's shown the ability to take some shots. His physique, like a lot of people's physiques, is kind of let's just say acclimated. He's not Overeem, obviously. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong, but like, I like where he's at. I don't mind that this is his last run. I know that could be a flag for some, but I feel like Overeem's he's always gonna get in there and fight for your money. He's not gonna be rattled, even by the worst losses. His ability to bounce back is like no other. And even if he can't get him out on the floor, and even if he can't take a step further, take Volkov down, the fact that they're gonna be in the small cage means they're gonna be in the clinch a lot. And Volkov's gotten better at the clinch, but I don't know how I like him against the best heavyweight clinch fighter possibly ever, right? All due respect to Josh Barnett and Randy Couture. And I know Volkov's beefed up. Shout out to Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. He was talking about and like tweeting pictures like how thick Volkov's looking, and he ain't lying. That definitely caught my eye. That is something that to be watchful of, and I think supporters should like it because he's been like doing way more running on his IG and putting on this muscle and weight. And he was already a conditioned athlete. Like, that's good news. It's just the thing is, like, I don't think he's going to have the strength or the conditioning edge against Overeem. And Overeem, although he won't be as long, although he does actually have the same reach at 80 inches, and he's only 3 inches shorter technically, there's a lot of size parity there, right? So it's like a lot of the advantages aren't like a huge wide gap that Volkov relies on. Again, it's the chin, and if Overeem plays rope-a-dope too much like he's done, I could totally see Volkov picking his shots, going to the body, and piercing around his guard to the head. Volkov's super accurate. Back from that kind of comes from his karate striking days, and he's really incorporated into kickboxing / MMA style of kickboxing. I talk about that more in my in-depth breakdown, but yeah, even though I get that he's favored, I wouldn't be surprised. If you got him at dog money, good on you. But I'm playing the dog money on Overeem, man. In the small cage where Volkov lost his last fight and Overeem won, he's got to face a guy more experienced who represents just as dangerous of a style fight as he returns to the place where he suffered his last defeat. We'll see. Also look for Overeem to throw uppercuts. Volkov's been eating those forever. That's just something, even though he's so tall, it's something that he's always been vulnerable to because he leans forward and tries to use his head as a head stopper to get good head position, but a little too emphasis on that in the clinch, and just one of his other weaknesses there in the clinch. Again, going against the best clinch fighter and possibly, all the heavyweight history and MMA, up there in all of MMA. So, give me the ream. I'll take a shot at him. Willing to crash on burn there. Chiasson Renault ain't happening. I did end up picking Chiasson in case they rebooked that for whatever reason, but I would have stayed away. The actual co-main event is Corey Sandhagen -400, Frankie Edgar +325. Dude, I did not expect to be picking Frankie Edgar, but here I am, folks. I'm actually going to pick Frankie Edgar here. And again, this isn't just a numbers value. Like you could have made the previous argument with a line swinging. The dog stay dog and the king stay king, to, quote some little bit of butchering of the wire there. But, ooh. My hat hurts. That's not good. But as I look closer to this matchup, again, it's just styles make fights and cage size. And speaking of unique stats, you have to go back and look. You can't just read Tough Finale or Fight Night because not all of them use the small cage, folks. Like I've said on other podcasts before, little historical reminders and tidbits. But like, yeah, once we got into the Big Fox era, it was active decision from the UFC brass and Dana to use the big cage whenever possible for advertising looks. They just, again, I mean, you kind of look right what they're grooming, not just to get on Fox, but what they're grooming to the sale. Like it all, the uniforms. In hindsight, we saw it's really easy to see what their plan was now, right? And hey, especially to Lorenzo, right? Good on you, you cashed out, brother. But like, that's kind of where they were going. So not all those are small cage. You have to go back and watch the footage, which of course your boy did. And Frankie Edgar is 4-0 when fighting in the small octagon. I don't have it written down here, but let's see if I can remember off my head. I think the first one was Hermes Franca. I know he's lost to Gray Maynard UFC Fight Night 13. Shouts to that one. That actually wasn't. That was a bit bigger. I don't know if it was full regulation, but it definitely wasn't like the small cage. Shoots. I'm gonna have to skip ahead. It wasn't BJ Penn in the third one. Pedro Munoz, of course, is the last one. Oh shoot, Jesus Christ! I even answered somebody on this. I'm gonna have to cheat and look, folks. I'm sorry. It was another tall guy too, wasn't it? It was. There were some decisions in there. Sorry, I know it's not the greatest podcasting, but it was. Matt Veach, of course. Matt Veach earned his title shot. Hermes Franca, Matt Veach, Pedro Munoz, and holy crap, why am I like drawing a blank on that? Oh, Chad Mendes, duh. I'm stupid. People shouting at the podcast. I'm usually that guy, and now I'm doing it to you guys. I'm sorry. But yeah, the point is like he's 4-0, and a lot of different style matchups there. But against taller guys, you needed to have really good wrestling and scrambling against the cage, decent clinch, and some good guillotines to threaten with. Benson Henderson, who could fight at lightweight in 170, had that in spades, right? Max Holloway, underrated different styling, but had the guillotine submission threat. Also had better counter wrestling than Sandhagen. No offense to Sandhagen. So when you look at those, it's kind of crazy. It's like, I'm just like, wow, okay. And Sandhagen, I know 33% takedown defense. I'm not for those stats, the lazy man stats that most of us tend to cite. I do it too. Don't get me wrong. Not hating, not throwing shade. Just saying. But there's some accuracy to that. It's more about keeping, like I read in the breakdown, it's more about keeping Sandhagen down. And I love his scrambling ability. Like the Rafael Sensao fight is some of my favorite scrambles, and shows why I love both those fighters. And I'm a big Elevation Fight Team guy. Shout out to Sean Madden. I believe I was it. Not Daryl Christensen. That's the wrestling guy in South. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess up the names now. The other striking coach. But yeah, obviously the fighters there are great. It's nothing. And I'm a big Sandhagen fan. I love this interviewing this dude when I was on Junkie Radio. One of my favorite interviews because he's really unique, nice guy. But this is just more of a style thing. And like I wrote in the Aljo fight. It's not just Aljo's a wrestler, and it was the small cage. Again, another fighter heavily favored to return against a bad stylistic matchup in a small cage, a bad stylistic fit, and thirdly, the same place that they suffered their last loss against, right? Whereas Frankie Edgar, even if he wasn't coming off a win, you think Frankie Edgar cares? He's coming in and he's fighting no matter what. Nothing's going to bother that guy, right? Hell, the dude doesn't even the dude doesn't even believe in coronavirus. But that's a whole other story. Anti-vaxxer. What? Oh, Jesus, Dan, you get yourself in trouble. Just saying, he said in a recent interview, it's his words, not mine, folks. He said he's done with COVID. So, all right. I mean, guy takes the shots he does. I'm guessing he thinks he can just bounce back. But yeah, hopefully this fight doesn't get canceled. but putting all that aside, right? You got to look at this fight stylistically, and yeah, it's just the way that he scrambles. He kind of tripods up, and yeah, against a wrestler who, yes, Frank Edgar can take it back, but more importantly, he re-wrestles into the hips. He'll hit mat returns for days, and the guy can really work really well off a front headlock choke. And he's just a really good scrambler all around. Amazing submission defense. So I don't like that, man, in the small cage. You know what I'm saying? And Sandhagen's got a lot of good shouts to Ed Gallo in the Wrestling from MMA podcast, like Anti-Wrestling. He can throw knees. He'll throw jump flying knees even. He throws calf kicks, which aren't anti-wrestling, but it's a good move to throw against Edgar. He really wasn't checking them too well, although he can counter off them. He can counter kicks in general. That's always been his MO. But, even just hitting counter right hands, and he showed that against Munoz in his last fight at this weight class. And I know Munoz isn't the fastest guy, but I liked what Frankie looked like overall. He looks still well intact. I know I'm picking a 40-year-old bantamweight that's not confident. You don't have to follow me off this cliff, folks. But yeah, even though he's got the good anti-wrestling, and he's even his distancing on his calf kicks in the last 3 fights have been better. If you really look at it, right? Like, everything is improving as they should with Sandhagen. He has uppercuts. It's going to be his best friend. It is always your best friend when you're facing Frankie Edgar. Uppercuts is the common culprit in his defeats, hard fights, knockdowns, etc. So he could definitely hit one of those. However, most of it's like frustrating / attritive to set you up for the big shot. So unless he hits one of those slick uppercuts, I don't see him having enough time to play in space to hit one of those spinning hook kicks. In fact, you look at Yair throw it, and one of the things maybe Yair does better than, one of the only things I would give credit to Yair doing better than Sandhagen, besides just being a better athlete, which he is the Taekwondo kicking. Because that's where, even though Sandhagen looks like he has a bit, especially earlier, has a bit of traditional stylings, he really doesn't. I think he might have done a little bit of like kids karate, like nothing serious. I believe, I know he did like the WAKA kickboxing, but like as far as traditional stylings, Yair, credit where credit's due, he's a long-time Taekwondo black belt, right? And he throws literally the exact same setup. Granted, he didn't bust, unfortunately for Yair, he didn't bust Frankie Edgar's orbital like Marlon Moraes was dealing with, which could have dealt with the vision for the shot, spin kick landing, but Yair literally throws the same setup at UFC 211, which I picked Frankie. One of the shouts to the MMA analysis, I know they always reference that as one of the biggest gift lines, but, I'd be lying if I wasn't nervous for Edgar in those spots, right, when those spin kicks were thrown, even though I was on Edgar big there. And they're not the same fighters, and again, I'm not trying to say that because I just said I'd give the check boxes to Sandhagen over Yair and every other thing, but we've seen Edgar defend those. Now, Edgar has been hit by stuff from that left side before, like Jeremy Stevens, the more basic switch kicks, so look for that from Sandhagen. However, I don't know if the small cage or Frankie Edgar's honey badger stylings, that it's never gone away. Good performances, bad wins or losses, he always has come in the fight for your money, right? That is one thing you can count on. I don't think he's going to have that time and place to get his favorite space in the small cage, and for just 3 rounds, which his last 3-round fight, Frankie Edgar's, might be, that UFC 211 aforementioned fight that people reference. However, again, not only do I warn people not to parallel Yair with Sandhagen, because Sandhagen is just way better, in my opinion, technically skilled as a fighter, but also not to write off him because of the Aljo fight. It was a bad stylistic matchup, and even though you look at the setup, it was some I know Rogan abuses the world class, or it was some world class setup right there. A back playing game from Aljo, man. It was so beautiful the way he was parlaying grips into choking positions. Oh my goodness! Like, even if Sandhagen was on point, I would have been it was going to be a hard night for him stylistically and specifically what he did. Okay. Secondly, all fighters are going to say this, right? Like Dan Hooker did against Chandler. Like, I didn't feel like I had a chance to get in there and fight, and I get that, and I'm not taking anything away from that. In fact, I'll even grant Sandhagen some truth there. I do believe he is much better than what he showed against Aljo. So even if you are on my side and you're picking or playing Edgar, don't use just that Aljo fight and like write him off. Like, Sandhagen is a legit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. What he showed me in that Assunção fight. However, Assunção, not the wrestler and scrambler, and the guy who just makes money off of these guys like Frankie Edgar does. That's traditionally been his MO. Slicing and dicing world-class dangerous guys, not afraid to shoot on Chucky Olives. That's right, Chucky Olives, not Charles. Get it right, folks, and credit where credit's due, the MMA analysis for that one. But yeah, so I'm going to take Edgar here. Just stylistically, it's got it written all over it, man. If I'm wrong, I'm happy. I'll be super happy for Sandhagen, A, and B. With a number like plus 325, you don't have to lay much to get much. So I'm going to be sprinkling on dogs, which is pretty much my theme here. Forewarning, folks. Although there won't be no dog action on this next one. Cody Stamen, minus 470. Asker, plus 375. I admittedly didn't do any tape study really on Asker. Doesn't have a ton of stuff on his bio that jumps out. And Cody Stamen was training for Marab, so he's tip-top shape. He's going to want to be showing stuff. And I'm going to be rooting for Cody, man. I'm sure he's got a lot of demons to get out of the basement with, unfortunately, like many of us, man. We're all dealing with some kind of loss or family issues, and he definitely had to deal with some loss of his own. So, of course, I'm very sympathetic to that. I know he's worked with my guy, Eric Nixick. Shout out to him. I'm not sure if he'll be in the corner. We'll see. But I'm going to take Stamen, obviously, open and got juiced all to hell. And I don't know what the decision prop's looking like, but, maybe the decision prop, but who knows. I'm hoping Stamen really puts the gas on it. On a short notice opponent. Diego Ferreira still holding as the favorite, minus 115. Beneil Dariush, minus 105. Not too far from the opener. This opened tight as like it should be. It should be tight. Both guys should deserve respect. However, maybe people are seeing what I see. Do you see what I see? Dog money on Dariush. And I was able to snatch it at one house, not the other. Don't know if I'll get it back, but I will pull the trigger if I do. Otherwise, not worth touching because it's such a close fight, and I do genuinely like both guys. I will be taking Dariush here. I can see why Ferreira is favored despite losing the rematch. I'm a big Safe Sayud Fortis MMA guy. I love this revival that Diego Ferreira has been on. All respect. Definitely not underestimating it. Definitely respect to those guys. I hate picking against that team, by the way. But like stylistically, neither have really fought in the small cage, but I suspect it'll serve Beneil Dariush well. Beneil Dariush has always obviously been he started off as a grappler who got better at Muay Thai under Rafael Cordero, but he's always had deceptively good cage wrestling, like maneuvering, wrestling trips, all the above, passing, advancing in the scrambles against the cage, tough, tight spots with dexterity. And even though Carlos Diego Ferreira has improved that part of the game, do not sleep. I'm not sleeping on it. I do not think it's better, though. I do not think he is, even though he looks like he's put some work in the strength and conditioning department, let's just say. I'm not sold that he's going to be the stronger fighter. I think the mentality here is the run that Ferreira's been on, and the fact that his losses have aged well. He is 0-2 against Southpaws, but yes, one of those Southpaws is against Beneil Dariush in their original match, where Ferreira did take it on short notice for what that's worth, folks. He flurries early, and then essentially the wrestling and grappling and top control that I'm kind of alluding to and getting to now from Dariush took over, okay? That was that fight down in Brazil, I believe. Short notice again for Ferreira. And then he loses to Dustin Poirier for his second Southpaw and only other career loss, right? Obviously, the Poirier loss has aged very well, and he's been on an impressive run since, with one USADA interruption aside. He also beat Albin Mercier, so he is 1-2 against UFC level Southpaws. My apologies to both Ferreira and OAM, who I love. But yeah, so he's got that going for him. But again, I don't know. I don't think he's the better wrestler, and Dariush is have to face really good wrestlers. Like, even though he's not a wrestler by trade, he's, according to American Top Team, when he was there, one of the hardest guys to take down on the mats, Rashid Magomedov, who that lone victory Dariush has over him, I rate that higher than both Ferreira's, not taking anything away from Ferreira, by the way, wins over Rustam Khabilov, who people are always hot and cold on, and I don't think any of us are really fair on Khabilov. And Maribek Taisimov, who I've always been suspect in trying to fade, and regardless of if you agree with me or not, he busted his train of hype and kind of wasted it, which is sad, and no shade to the guy, and perhaps it wasn't his fault with all these visa issues. I don't know. I know it gets really sketchy when we're talking about Chechens. And I'm not throwing shade at the Chechens, by the way. Some of the best fighters, tough people. Just unfortunately with the politics and the dictators, it really taints that. So It's tough. But anyways, neither here nor there. I rate Beneil Dariush's wins very high. Obviously been more of a striker. You do worry that he's falling in love with his hands. So I guess the logic, like I was saying, is that Beneil comes out strong. But if he doesn't get the finish, does he gas himself? Kind of like the Dunham fight that ended in a draw, and Fajeda can take over. I don't blame that logic, except aside from that draw, Dariush has won every fight that's ever gone on the scorecards on his career. Not that it means he's impervious to judge's decision, obviously, folks. Just saying that's kind of a neat tidbit, right? So yeah, I'm going to go with Beneil Dariush here. If you get plus money, great. Otherwise, I'd be careful about really playing this fight. This is just a fight that I'm excited about. If I don't get a chance to play it in my other house for dog money, I won't be butthurt about it because it's just a fun fight. Speaking of past opponents, at least one of the guys, we got Michael Johnson minus 225. I know people still argue about that Beneil Dariush fight. Comeback on Clay Guida plus 185. This is an easy avoid for me, man. I know Johnson is, his MO is winning fights that he shouldn't win, and or winning fights that he's supposed to win and then giving them away to submission. So anything north of 2-1 on Johnson is immediately, should immediately be out of play for you. And no disrespect, I'm a big Michael Johnson fan, man. He's cashed at some big plus odds dating back to Edson Barbosa for me. So and Gleason Tebow, those were two big dog cashes for me back in the day. So I got love for Michael Johnson, but you can't bet him at 2-1. So then let's look at Clay Guida. As a wrestler, he's a grinder. He makes his money off exposing these guys. However, Guida is, you want to, I know I'm picking an older guy in Frankie Edgar, but you want to talk about miles, man. Guida's got more miles for sure. He was fighting for Strikeforce titles before against Josh Thompson before Frankie Edgar was even in the UFC. Maybe even before Frankie Edgar started his career. You know what I'm saying? Clay Guida's got fucking miles for the uninformed. But the thing is, Clay Guida hasn't gotten a submission win in over a decade. Not since Takanori Gomi, I believe, at a fight that I was at, UFC 125, of course. Frankie Edgar put on a great fight there, held the wall, held the door with a draw against Gray Maynard in their rematch, UFC 125 resolution. That is the last time Clay Guida's gotten a submission win, folks. It's Clay Guida is usually the one being submitted. So I'm going to go with Michael Johnson here, and I'm going to pick him by knockout, but in no way am I confident, and I am not touching. This is number one on my avoid list. Next fight's also my avoid list because I didn't tape it, and the line seems off. You got a similar spread. You got Mike Rodriguez minus 235, Danilo Marquez plus 195. I like Mike Rodriguez's style. It's a sexy long striker style, so maybe that's why he's always getting love. I know people always why is he a big favorite? I get it. I don't know why he's a big favorite too. So I absolutely agree with anybody who's tweeting that. Definitely not coming at you, but also, again, back to my point about y'all MMA gambling Twitter, whether it doesn't have to be you in particular, but it is the degenerates that hey, I'm a part of too. Look at this podcast, folks. I'm no better, but it is a result of the degenerates and y'all love for the sexy striker. At least that's my thing. Danilo Marquez, though, has got more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu creds, it looks like, than Mike Rodriguez, his blue belt that he credits himself with, and, more importantly, came up because his Faja was a boxer, kind of like someone else on here, I believe. But he actually has, some boxing accolades, amateur albeit, Danilo Marquez. So it looks like he has more boxing than Mike Rodriguez's Muay Thai on his on-paper record, for whatever that's worth. So do we get some boxing and Muay Thai and whoever has the better jiu-jitsu? But you also don't want to overrate Danilo Marquez because he was coming off, right? Wasn't he pretty inactive? But he beat Kadis Ibragimov, who is just a joke, one of the worst fighters. He's up there with Benicio Mojeda level. No disrespect, but just got to call it what it is. So you don't want to overvalue that either. So I get it. I'm going to pick Mike Rodriguez. Of course, I'm curious to see if Tyson Chartier is in the corner. I believe he manages him, but I'll be rooting for Mike, but I'm definitely staying away. It's definitely on my avoid list. Timur Vallia minus 370, Martin Day plus 310. little bit of money came in day in the opener, but now he's back over 3-1. I think he'll stay there. He'll probably get inflated even higher as we get closer to fight time because Timur Valiev, he's Dagestani. He's got the dog fight team on the SureDog profile. If people even choose to look that far, maybe they just see that it's a Russian dude and they're betting him. Or maybe they go even beyond the SureDog profile and knowing that he's Russian and they see that he's training with Frankie Edgar again, right, over there in that Jersey camp. And he's going to be my pick here, folks. I ain't hating, but his entries are a bit wild. And even though it was from a different stance, as Trevin Jones is a southpaw and he got caught with a lead right hook, not a check, a lead right hook. And he threw, maybe it wasn't even a lead because Trevin Jones is so fast, but it looks like he throws away the 2 and then comes back with it, which is even sexier. Oh my God, that's real sexy striking right there. Good on you, Trevin Jones. But I still warn, because both these guys were in similar predicaments. And they didn't lose for gassing, even though Timur Valiev, we remember it that way because there was a couple of those fights that night where the guy shot the proverbial wad trying to get the finish and then got finished. Valiev still looked fresh. He just looked overexcited, and his entries can be a bit wild. He can throw setups, but still ultimately kind of will shuffle in and end up kicking naked in the sense that there was no real punches, and it's still very counterable. And I know Martin Day got knocked out by Davey Grant. Hello there, Davey. That's right, Davey Grant, the most creepiest voice in this podcast. Yeah, that was creepy. And that was also unexpected for Davey to hit that. And it was very bad, right? Okay, you got to worry about this guy's chin for sure. Not telling you not to. But keep in mind, Martin Day also almost finished this guy too. Not once, but twice. The first time, he counters a kick with a right hand. Very relevant, again, for what I just said and what we saw of Timur Valiev, right? He's got power. This fight is a catch weight that I believe is going to be at 145 or 140? 145. So Valiev usually fights at 135, and that catch weight that he lost was at 140. This is at 145, which is going to benefit Day. Now, Day is a 135 or 2, but I think he should be fighting more at 145. He's really big and long, and you look at the chin things, and if you look at his kickboxing accolades and the titles that he won before getting in MMA, those were at 145 pounds. So they're going to be fighting at that weight. So for that reason, I'll be picking Valiev, but this is dog or pass to me, man. I mean, and even if it is dog, like you, again, for the big odds and kind of got chin you're betting on, kind of like with the Edgar fight, you just sprinkle light, right? Whether you're picking him or not, because stylistically, there's definitely a way here. I know the chin is like a big flag, but again, Valiev can be hurt too, and he's a much more wider striker. He's not as tight. So that is something to think about. Oh, by the way, really quick, back to the Sandhagen Edgar fight. I forgot to bring this up. Shout out to Aaron Bronstetter, TSN MMA show. Another reason why you got to listen to that and the interviews. I didn't listen to the Joe Valtellini one, but I listened to the interview edition. And Sandhagen, I found there's a good and a bad. Good news is he's got Steel Chopping in training camp. Who's that guy who looks like he helped Willow on the first part of his homage? Dustin Ortiz, that's right. Jesus, damn, this how you get your ass kicked. Making widget jokes. But not the worst, especially for wrestling and scrambling. To be like a training partner for Sandhagen, which is great. However, Sandhagen did say so himself. He admittedly doesn't have that many people in that range, weight class, or size to train with. So, give and take there, right? And Sandhagen doesn't feel like a guy. He's too smart and doesn't seem like his style to boast. So I don't think it's a misdirection thing. But Aaron laid it out pretty well. It's like Frankie Edgar is hard to finish, but you're a finisher. I'm sure you see yourself finishing him, right? And that's a pretty layup question. But like Aaron is very smart, and there's a lot of layers to it if you're paying attention. He's saying if the fighter is going to out himself on a certain level for people like me and hopefully you, if you're really doing your homework, you're trying to pay attention to see where these fighters' heads are at. And essentially Sandhagen says he doesn't see him knocking Edgar out, and he is, it's good to be prepared to go to decision, but sees it going to decision. And in fact, he says, well, that's troubling, but he adds on and says, I see him submitting him more than anything. And I'm like, the guy that BJ Penn in his prime couldn't submit, and Charles Oliveira, despite Frankie shooting in on him a bunch of times, couldn't submit. Although Charles Oliveira actually had a guillotine on him tight at the end of round 2. Another story for another day. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, who's submitted Frankie Edgar? Nobody. That's who. Nobody. So that's really disturbing that he wants to be the first person to do that. Edgar even shot, even though he did most of it in round 2 and got away from it, different style matchup, shot a bunch on Pedro Munoz too. I mean, the guillotine fucking captain, right? So that really worries me, man. And I like Sandhagen. He's a smart kid. But even if the submission thing was gamesmanship, I felt like there was a lot of truth into what he said, whether he believes it or not, that Frankie Edgar is a durable guy, right? And this fight could go to decision. And if you're a Sandhagen fan and picking him here, it's like, if this fight goes to the decision, does that mean like Frankie Edgar is just he's just striking in space the whole time, not getting knocked out and not going for takedowns subsequently? Like, come on, one of those two are going to happen. So anyway, sorry, I know I keep going back to that fight, and like, I love Sandhagen, I do. I can't get that out of my head. But Timur and Valiev and Day, yeah, I'm gonna pick Timur, and yeah, the Day thing, I'm gonna probably may sprinkle on him light if this line keeps going up, because it's a dogger pass in my eye. Not dogger pass is Carol Hossa minus 245 and Jocelyn, Edwards plus 205. Again, she's got like the sexy stylings, going for submissions and strikes, but she still needs that MMA melding, Jocelyn Edwards, to kind of put it together. And there's a lot of promise there, and I think she will. And I think she will turn those corners. I don't think she turns the corner immediately, especially against a girl who seems to be the antithesis. Carol Hossa outranks her. She recently got her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's no longer a brown belt, like an older broadcast said. And she's been competing and placing since she was like a blue or purple belt level. She's been doing Jiu-Jitsu since she was a young girl. But more importantly, she looks to have a really good feel for the striking and strikes on all layers at range with kicks, leg kicks, will throw in knees, whether she's entering or leaving the pocket, and placing punches all through and in between. I really love what I see from Carol Hossa. It's very consistent. She can keep a high output. She doesn't get tired. She doesn't throw herself out of position, which means she gives up very little takedowns and is hard to take down. She is definitely also going to be the bigger and more physical girl. I don't like chalk at all on this card, but if you're going to go with a parlay piece, she is one that I may pair with somebody for even money. So stay tuned on that. Next fight, Devontae Smith minus 300, Justin James plus 250. James coming in last minute. Of course, he's been posting on my IG feed, or I've been seeing him on my IG feed for a couple weeks now, getting back into training, almost like he knew something was going to come up, which is good. And James typically does better at these last minute spots. I mean, we've seen him at 55 and 45. Tend to go too hard in the beginning and kind of start to gas out, right? Even on quote-unquote full camps, or as much of a full camp as you can get in this pandemic era. However, there's really tough style matchups, and against like anybody getting connected with that Benitez knee, right, is going down, for one. And then two, he comes in on short notice, beats Frank Camacho, and then the UFC asks him to immediately turn around while he's in like, you know, barely can celebrate in the mood mode, and has to cut to 145, which really kills him. I think James is a tweener, but tweeners will ultimately be better, especially in this pandemic era, short notice fights, fighting up higher weight class. And Devontae Smith, I love Devontae Smith. Both these guys have been on the line movement. Octagon Outlook, shouts to James Lynch and that show. Love both these guys. Devontae Smith especially. He's just so damn genuine, man. He's definitely got that kind of like Flavor Flav vibe, kind of like, yeah, boy. And he's just like, but you like when you listen to him talk, like, he's such a genuine dude. Like, you can't help but root for Devontae Smith. That being said, biased aside, no way you can justify paying over minus 3 to 1 for Devontae Smith. He's not fought in the pandemic era. He is coming off over a year layoff, has proved that he can be touched himself. He also is not proven and can be suspect in later rounds, so it's not like it's a stylistic antithesis. And James, criticize what you will about the gas tank. You know this guy's going to fight for your money. So at these odds, you bet your ass I sprinkled. It's bias. You don't got to follow me off the cliff, but if you do, if you see what I see, you can sprinkle for very little to get a decent return at this mod. So I'm taking shots on dogs across the board, but again, I'm trying to smartly measure what I give across, so that, I only need maybe 2 dogs to hit to make my night, no matter how any of my other bets go. That's kind of the way I'm setting this up. Maybe even with, might get a little dangerous and throw some chalk in here if I do this, pull the trigger on the second leg. Got to research it more. It is not Molly McCann minus 145, Laura Procopio plus 125. However, if this line gets any tighter, I may play some McCann. I think McCann is definitely the better boxer. I like her transitional game. And the Tyler Santos one's a weird one because Santos didn't fight at all against a girl who was not that great in Mara Romero Borella. And then she turns up super athlete Barbosa mode against McCann. And McCann hung tough in there. But, it was a different fighter than we all saw on tape. So I'd be careful about condemning Molly McCann off of that performance. She's bounced back before. She is a spunky one, and she looks to be in some good shape coming back into this one. She has also fought in the pandemic era, whereas Laura Procopio, kind of like Devontae Smith, similar layoff over 1 year, has not fought in this pandemic era. So that's going to be the big question. Procopio does have a jiu-jitsu advantage on paper. I don't believe she's a black belt, but I believe she's a brown belt and actually has been competing since a blue or purple belt for what that's worth. And kind of like Carol Hossa, as you could see, she has a natural feel for the striking. She just wasn't as clean of a striker as Hossa. Even though Hossa was more varied than McCann, I do believe that McCann will be the more cleaner striker and has the output to go 3 rounds. So as long as she doesn't get caught speeding on the ground or give up easy takedowns, I think McCann can get this. It will be in the smaller cage, and there's a lot we don't know about Procopio, who looks game and is, she's got some physicalness to her too. So we'll see. Pick is McCann, but no action. Manel Cape minus 105. Tightening up. Alexandre Pantoja minus 115. This is another one I like that I was going to stay away from, but I may actually be writing up this one now if the line movement keeps going that way. Again, Cape, he fits a lot. He's so athletic and explosive and sexy striker. So he checks the boxes for what bettor's like. And Pantoja, as much as I'm on Pantoja mark, I got to call it as I see it. He is not inspired confidence to be betting on, much less as a favorite, right? So at the opener or at the higher price that he was, I definitely get staying away as I have. However, if he goes to even money, not just dog money, but even money, I may pull the trigger here because Manel Cape, I watched a couple times on Risen. I'm not familiar with him, too familiar, but now that I have to do tape on him, I went back to watch, and I liked what I saw. He, too, is the other guy on this list who, his father, I'm not a boxing person, obviously, but his father was pretty decently accomplished. He is from Portugal. He fights out of Portugal, which is, to its credit, producing more MMA fighters. And he looks kind of like a wrestle boxer, but he's like a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Looks like he recently got it. But he's a very willing wrestler and a willing submission guy, and I don't like that here. I've seen him jump for guillotines, jump for submissions. He hits his best takedowns when he's rocked, oddly enough, which is kind of problematic, for one. And for two, he's even given up top position and dropped to his back for guillotines a bunch of times. I don't like that against a guy like Pantoja, especially when your main form of losing is by submission. Manel Cape, right? Luckily for Cape, he is, not to sound lazily racist, but he does seem like he's got just some inherent conditioning and athleticism to carry him through fights where he's not getting tired, or at least he recovers quickly. So I still give him the cardio edge over Pantoja, even with it being his UFC debut. But again, in the small cage and his willingness to grapple, I feel like the worry is Pantoja has fallen over his hands and gets too into slugging. Well, he tried to grapple last time, but Askar Askarov, shout out to Shaq from Half the Battle. You want to talk about Team Weasel? That guy's a freaking weasel. He looks like a weasel, too. That guy's weaseling scorecards left and right. Him and Thiago Moises, top guys I'm looking to fade. They're riding a little too high and a little bit too deceptive with their... I know we can all play that revisionist history game, and I try not to, but boy, are they asking for it. Anyways, another time. But Pantoja will grapple, and even if he doesn't and he's dead set on striking, again, the small cage, the action, the craziness, plus the willing wrestling and submission part of the game of Cape, I could see him giving that, and I don't, unless you're like Dustin Ortiz, like, or that level, like, I don't like you scrambling with a guy like Pantoja. So even though I dangerously say this, and it actually did happen, or it should have happened at least for one of the rounds against Askarov, but I could totally see Cape giving his back, because kind of like with Sandhagen, he tripods when he does get up. He inherently tripods, and that's gonna give, gets one of the best back takers in any division, really, not just flyweight. In any division, Pantoja, like, okay. Especially with my man Jussier Formiga sadly gone. Like, Pantoja's one of the best back takers in that division. I feel like he's going to be asking for the wrong type of fight. So, again, kind of like I warned with Dan Hooker, even though I picked him to get wrestled, I was one of the only people warning that everyone's talking about Chandler's chin. You got to be sometimes more worried toward the end after the mileages accrue for the guys who have durable chins and are in all these wars, because it could start dropping off like out of nowhere, right? So we'll see if that happens to Pantoja. I wasn't going to take a shot, but if this minus 115 gets any lower, I'm playing my guy Pantoja. This next fight is another stay away. I saw some people on Rivera, and I'm like, it definitely looks like a dog or pass off first view, so I don't blame that. But when I look closer, I don't like this matchup at all. That's Ode Osborne, Spider-Man. Sorry, Willem Dafoe breaking the glass. Does Willem Dafoe like break a glass almost in every movie? Like, if I was an actor, especially like a Willem Dafoe, like I would like either have it written in, or I would just force it in somehow, like to break a glass. So like hardcore followers, like every time I was in a movie, like even if it was a small role or a big movie, like they would just be waiting and break the glass, and like people would pop for it, like, ah, yes. And then there'd be like 3 people in the theater, and everyone else would be like, what the fuck are those guys doing? Wow, Dan, that was a really random thought that you stored up. Okay, but Osborne, see how easy I get off track. Minus 210. Jerome Rivera plus 175. Gave Rivera a contender series grade of B. These are both contender series guys, and I do the grading the winner series, of course, on MMAJunkie.com. Ode Osborne got an A, as he was in a southpaw versus southpaw matchup. I didn't go through their whole careers, but relevantly within like their last 5 fights and all their top level fights, they are 1-1. Again, actually, Jerome Rivera is like 1-2 against UFC southpaws. He beat that Latchman character. He lost to Big Fig in his last fight, and then he also lost Royval in the TKO injury fight, LFA, right? Whereas Ode Osborne fought a southpaw versus southpaw matchup in his contender series fight, but just like, and that's the thing, just like Rivera, the one relevant southpaw versus southpaw fight they won, it was both by submission, so it wasn't like they were, doing it on the feet. That being said, I do believe both their styles translate. Rivera's because he likes to kick, and now he's going to have leg kicks more open than the typical open stance targets that he likes to abuse. However, he is very counterable off of kicks, both when he got knocked out by Nam, and even just the hard shots that Big Fig, who was gassing, was able to hit on him and isn't the biggest puncher like his brother, right? So Ode Osborne, he kind of has that Conor McGregor athletic feel, came out with it. If he keeps that same energy and is able to defend takedowns better, or control the wrestling better, then I think he has this, because, that takedown defense that he showed in his, at the end of his, or not the end, at one part of his contender series fight, and then of course in the Kelleher fight, which led to his demise in that one, is definitely uncomfortable. But it's like, dude, the guy's wrestled in high school and wrestled in college. Like, he knows how to wrestle. But he also is, was boasting about his guard even before he got that contender series sub from his guard. So maybe it's one of those things, like he's too comfortable there. And hopefully that Kelleher thing was like a wake-up call, because I don't want to diss the guy or whatever, like as bad as like Jerome Rivera's wrestling is, like he's a willing grappler, and that might be enough to beat a guy like Ode Osborne, especially if you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt like Rivera is, right? Whereas Ode Osborne at least is listed as a purple belt for what that's worth. But I don't know, the wrestling is just not enough to sell me with the chin. And again, what's my trend, whether it's the Montel Jacksons or the Sean O'Malley's, whether they're gassing or they're just getting injured or knocked out or falling apart, it's these guys that cutting too much weight. right? These tall guys when they try to make the lower weight classes, right? Which is why you should leave some room to be surprised for Day at 145, like I said earlier, right? These tall guys when they're cutting a lot of weight, there's so much of your body percentage you're giving up when you're, guys to make little weight have a hard time cutting 20 pounds. And there's some guys trying to attempt those cuts like Figueiredo, right, at flyweight. The difference is it's just so much bigger of a percentage of your body weight. It's so not good. That's why knockouts to random injuries to gassing all happen. Like, there's a reason why I'm fading these guys and I'm usually on the right side of it, folks. So for that reason, I will pick Osborne, but in no way am I confident. In no way should he be worth that price. I get it if it's dog or pass for you, but for me, I think you should just pass on this fight altogether. Next fight, Yusuf Zalal minus 245, Seungwoo Choi plus 205. Seungwoo Choi, like no crazy taekwondo things that you would like stereotype from his area in his bio. Just a guy who kind of came out of the chute in the MMA scene. Tough Korean, well trained, well rounded. These aren't lazy, nor are they bad stereotypes to have. They are very true with the Korean fighters. However, I don't disagree with the price, even though Zalal initially opened at like minus 150 or something, a lot closer. Congrats on you if you were able to get that straight play in. I think it was worth the straight play there. Zalal's well-rounded as well, except I don't think he'll be bothered as much by the size parity. I don't think he's that reliant on it, although it certainly does help him for his when he wants to stick and move more. However, I do feel that he'll be the better grappler. He won't have that grappling and wrestling threat. Again, Ilia Topuria is for people paying attention. I know I was high on him. Ed Gallo and my co-host Dan Levy, I think were the only people that were. We were the only three that I saw in the space really saying anything about this guy before he showed up. And so he's legit. Trust us. He's legit. Does that mean Seungwoo Choi can't win? Does that mean this fight can get too inflated? Sure. But if you do pair Zalal with Karol Hossa, it's like pretty much even money. So that's what I'm considering. I didn't pull the trigger on it. Not saying you should. I'm just, as I always am on this podcast, transparent in what I'm thinking and what I'm playing. So as we go over an hour, more than I wanted to for the breakdown and more than I wanted to for the intro, we'll wrap it up here. Again, I try to keep these, I don't want to make these too lengthy, and it's hard enough as it is being that was one thing I noticed with like a lot of the podcasts. I noticed like not many solo hosts, so I'm pretty proud of that. But at the same time, I do wonder, I do love the top 5 shows with the co-hosts, and it's a great excuse to interchange them. But like with this show, at least maybe the betting part or overall be better with a permanent co-host. I don't know. I'm going to bounce that off of you listeners, though, so I wanted to bring that up. That was another good point of reflection from all this. Because, I don't mind being the Bill Burr of MMA podcast, but I'm the only person that calls myself the Bill Burr of MMA podcast. That isn't really that glorified. Anyways, let me know if you guys like the Bill Burr version, so to speak, or you think this thing needs a co-host like every other podcast, pretty much. You let me know. All right, recapping picks and plays from the top. Taking. Oh, by the way, should I don't want to out these stories. Oh, my God. Fuck it. That's another reason why you listen to this podcast, because you get unique stories. And it's not because I'm trying to like name drop or whatever, anything about training stories, but I will drop those. These ones aren't that, though. However, I do know somebody that may or may not have trained at a gym Overeem has trained at. Let's just say, I don't want to give away what gym. We'll say one of the American United States gyms, because that opens up the board, right? And he may or may not have walked in on Overeem, butt ass naked, just flexing in front of the mirror. Just like American Psychoing himself, but without, the blonde prostitute. And apparently there are other dudes in the room. Like, it wasn't just him. Like, I've walked into, changing rooms on some fighters, too, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I do not need to see that, and I will never look at some of those fighters the same way. Especially, neither will my friend. And, yes, if in case you're wondering, yeah, giant piece he was packing. And so he's hungry. He's got that confidence because another friend, God, I want out. I don't want to share bad. I will share this. Let's just say I'm not going to out anybody, but or any fighters. But I did have a friend that worked at a dentist office that handled the UFC contracts for this card. You guys can hit me up with this one. Who you think? Okay. So, and there's this hot like receptionist college girl who works with, right? And she may or may not have been flirting with Overeem, and Overeem may not have flirting back. And he's a married man, so I'm not going to throw any accusations. I'm not going to speak out of school here. In fact, I will say the girl found out he was married anyways and had kids, and so she wasn't interested in him like that. So because my friend kind of was like, oh, talking to Reem, you like the Reem, huh? Kind of give him the elbow, and she's like, no, he's married with kids, you know. And she's like, however, the prelim fighter so and so wasn't, so I gave him my number, and he didn't get the name, he couldn't remember. So I'm like, fuck, I'm trying to think of who it is. And so I was like, who's on the undercard? That's like, okay, like, it's not Martin Day, right? Because he's a last-minute replacement. And the story was like from weeks ago, right? So none of the last-minute replacements. So part of me is like, Devontae Smith? I'm not trying to I'm not trying to just lump in, she's talking to Reem. That means she, likes to pretend. I'm saying they're handsome guys. They're very likable characters too. You got Reem all buttoned up. Well, basically, I like to flex in front of the mirror, and you got Devontae Smith. He's got a lovable personality and handsome looks. You know what I'm saying? So that's my vote. I could maybe a Corey Sanhagen because he's just so nice and. He's got that boy next door quality. You know what I'm saying? Maybe she was into that. I don't know. But which prelim fighter got the number? That is the game that I got to play with my friend to find out. So I'm going to put the bet in, and I'm going to check in with him. But I'm going to bet, he can tell me if I'm wrong when I'm listening, because I think he went to double check. I'm going to bet it was Devontae Smith that got them digits. All right, Jesus, Dan, that was needless gossip. I'm taking Overeem over Volkov. I'm taking Edgar over Sanhagen. Wow, Dan, two 40-year-olds in a row. Taking Stamen over Asker. Asker, bro. Who asked her? I don't know. We're trying to find out. Taking Dariush over Fajeda. Taking Johnson over Guida. Taking Rodriguez over Marquez. Taking Valiev over Day. Taking Hossa over Edwards. Taking Janes over Smith, taking McCann over Procopio, taking Pantoja over Cape, taking Osborne over Rivers, taking Zalal over Choi. May pair up Rosa Zalal for even money. Took a shot at the Reem on 1 unit, plus 169 for a straight plays. Took a shot at Dariush, plus 100 at one house for 1 unit. Took a sprinkle on Edgar, plus 315 for a half a unit. I put somewhere in the neighborhood of like a quarter to a half a unit on my guy Janes. It's a super biased pick at plus 140. And I wrote Day, and Pantoja, I may sprinkle on Day if that line gets any higher, because I believe it's dog or pass. And Pantoja, if they're going to bet him to even money, much less dog money, your boy is playing that. Did not touch any props. Sorry if I didn't give you too much info on those. My avoid list is 3 strong with Johnson, Guida, Rodriguez, Marquez, and Rivera Osborne. Thank you all for doing the Amazon list. That's what I forgot to read and pull up. I'm a bad podcaster. It's okay. Thank you guys for using that. It's a way to support the show, which is for free. Always has been free for the last about half a decade now. And 242 episodes in, don't worry, we'll be remaining free. From top 5 shows, breaking down all the UFC cards, all the fights on them from top to bottom, even some Bellator. I appreciate the love, guys, and if you want to give back to the show without hitting or paying money, because it is a free show, although there is a PayPal account, some of you are not allowed to use it. The Robert G's, the Chris, we'll call them the Chris, or the Tony C's of the world. These loyal listeners who are way too generous. But if you guys want to support the show for free without spending extra money, because I feel bad even asking, which is another reason why I keep the show free, you can go to mixedmartialanalyst.com, which does support the show, and you can have smartphone-friendly players there. For those of you who ain't on the Spotify or SoundClouds or wondering where that is, it is coming, I know, but it's not there yet. You go to mixedmartialanalyst.com over to the right, whether you go to Amazon or on it, you want to ease your conscience from buying from the corporations, you click through that link, and a percentage of your sale at no extra cost to you will be kicked back to this here show, and I assure you, it is a appreciated. That is one way to do it, or you can just share, give positives, likes, ratings, and reviews on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Daniel Tom MMA. It really helps. Thank you guys again. Thank you for checking out the last Top 5 show to Connor. Thanks, Spencer, on the recap. We'll be recapping, breaking down shows going forward, 12 out of 13 weeks, baby. Good luck on your picks and plays, and always protect your neck.